Christian, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. So the first thing I want you to explain is I didn't even realize that there's this Presidential Advisory Commission on election integrity. What is that board? What do you guys do? What's the goal and strategy of it?
Well, listen, that was formed in 2017, and every left-wing group there was sued us, and there was a melee of litigation that resulted in it being disbanded in like late 17.
Really? And so who appointed? Did President Trump appoint you to it?
Yeah, President Trump appointed me, Chris Kobach, Hans von Spakovsky, Christy McCormick, who's on the AC now. So, yeah, we tried to do something by gathering all the voter rolls around the country, and every single Secretary of State went berserk and didn't allow us to get all this data to do an analysis about how clean the elections were. Interesting.
So where does it stand right now? Where does this commission stand?
It stands like sort of like the Providence Steamroller. I mean, it's a done, dead thing. They won the NFL championship in 28. They're gone. It's gone. We haven't had a passee in existence for almost 8 years.
So is the goal right now, President Trump is on fire, would you recommend that he reconstitute this panel with a different mission, the same mission? What?
No, I'll tell you what they're doing, and that's a good thing. The Justice Department has power under a federal statute to get the same information that we sought as part of the Election Integrity Commission. Those letters have already gone out, Sean, to Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, other states, to get these voter rolls and start doing analysis. This was part of the 1960 Civil Rights Act because states like Mississippi wouldn't ever tell the feds who was and wasn't registered. So this got in this federal law in 1960 that states have to give this to the Attorney General. That's why the Attorney General has asked for it, and that's why Secretaries of State are wailing and gnashing teeth like Sheena Bellows in Maine, who's complaining about it, and as well as other Secretaries of State.
But here's what I don't get, and this is why I thought that voter information was public, meaning that I know when I was at the RNC, Data Trust now, which is a private entity or a public, I don't even know what the legal criteria is. But my point is, I thought that most states, most of that was public data.
It depends. I mean, we've been litigating in courts all over the country. We're in the First Circuit. We just had a big victory there. Fourth Circuit, we're arguing, I think, in 2 months. South Carolina makes the data public, but only to South Carolina registered voters. That's the issue that we have in the Fourth Circuit in Richmond coming up in 2 months. They're using these laws, these local laws, these anti-federal laws to block public data from being public. And that's exactly why PILF sued South Carolina. And that's exactly why we won. And that's why they appealed to the Fourth Circuit. We've beaten places like New Mexico and Maine and Colorado. These places are denying public data, Sean. So it's not so easy just to assume that RNC can get the data because they might be able to get the data through vendors, but the general public can't.
Or maybe through a state party, right?
Right.
Okay. But here's what I don't understand. South Carolina, to me, had a Republican governor, a Republican legislature. Like, why that? I don't get that. That one blows my mind when you say it.
Yeah, how about that? One of the most conservative states. I don't think Henry McMaster fully understands what's happening. I don't think I know the Attorney General is on the side of transparency, Alan Wilson.
Alan Wilson, yeah.
He's been very helpful in this case. But I don't think that the governor of South Carolina fully is aware that the Election Commission in South Carolina is fighting against election integrity, against transparency. And we already won in the lower court in Columbia. Now we have to go to Richmond to defend our victory just to allow the voter rolls to be examined.
You mean Richmond, South Carolina?
Negative. Richmond Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Oh, okay. I get it. I didn't realize that's what, see, this is why you're a lawyer and I'm not. I didn't realize that's where the Fourth Circuit was. So here's what I don't get, though. The Attorney General, Alan Wilson, you say he gets it. The Henry McMaster, the governor, maybe not. Okay. What's up with the Secretary of State? The Secretary of State's a Republican, right?
Yeah, I used to be general counsel of the South Carolina Secretary of State, and they don't have anything to do with elections.
What?
This is one of these states like North Carolina and Wisconsin that delegates to a board.
No kidding. So it's the board, and who appoints this board?
The legislature and the governor, I think, or a mix thereof. So these are all people accountable to the very Republican political branches, yet they're hiding transparency. They're blocking access to the voter rolls from people who actually know what to look for. Yeah, they'll give it to their local people, but they don't know what to look for.
Okay, I'm not going to I mean, there's two things here. Let's go with the first one first. If I'm you, why not just get a local Republican to hand it over? Like, in other words, it can't be that hard to find somebody, I mean, with your connections. Is the issue that you're fighting on behalf of everyone else, or that you can't get access to it?
Yeah, look, our local council was the former chairman of the Lexington County Republican Party. And if you know anything about South Carolina politics, that's as big as a Republican county as you get. But that isn't the point. The point is transparency. Federal law says, under the National Voter Registration Act, that these voter rolls are transparent. They have to be disclosed. And so it's not a solution just to get a straw man to go get them. We have to fight for the principle of election integrity. And it's outrageous in South Carolina that particular officials are not on the right side of this.
When we started this conversation, Christian, I thought to myself, okay, this is probably all Dem states. We obviously are now talking about one of the most conservative states, South Carolina. Are they alone, or are there other Republican conservative type states that are in there? Please don't say yes. Please don't say yes.
We had to sue Utah earlier this summer. Utah exempts, you can opt out of transparency if you're a voter. When you register to vote, you can say, no, don't make my records transparent under federal law. And so 40% of the Utah voter rolls are hidden from the public.
Okay, this begs an obvious. So, all right, let me just ask the second part, and then get back to this for a second. Is it trend mostly Democrat states, or is this actually a big bipartisan problem?
Well, look, Alabama charges like 30 grand or more to get the voter roll. They fought like crazy against the NAACP to disclose it. And they won a big case where they said, we only have to disclose in Alabama in paper. So we asked for it in paper, Sean, and they said, we really can't do it. It'll be like $3 million for you to get the voter roll. So there's another example: Utah, South Carolina, Alabama. But we've also got Hawaii, Maine, these other states like Michigan that are problematic. So it's not just a red or blue issue. It's both sides of the problem.
All right, because that gets to my bigger thing. I've always believed that there's always a reason why. Like, in other words, it's not that hard in this day and age to send a file. Like, here's the file. You can download it. You can, even if you charge for it, like even when you request a Freedom of Information Act, sometimes they'll say to copy all this information is X amount of dollars. Like, it's 5 cents a page or something, which I get. I don't have a problem with that if it's reasonable. If it's like, hey, this costs us money. Then I think a reasonable cost in those cases is warranted. But it seems to me as though if you see this kind of pattern going on, generally it means to me that someone's hiding something, that they don't want to comply with a rather easy request. At least for me, maybe I'm just sort of conspiracy oriented, but like, is there some overarching excuse that they give you guys?
Yeah, well, they don't give it to us, but doing this for a decade, I can tell you what it is. There are always big problems on voter rolls: missing dates of birth, people's names who are screwed up. People registered, Sean, multiple times. We found a guy in Pittsburgh named Rashawn Slade. He was registered 6 times simultaneously. Everywhere we look, there's a mess. Everywhere we look, there's missing information. So one of the reasons they want to hide the voter rolls is because they don't want their work checked. They don't want anybody to find their problems.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was in the White House, they did this story that says, because I think in light of the commission that you were part of, the story came out and it said Sean Spicer is still registered to vote in Rhode Island, which is where I grew up. And my understanding is that when you go to a new state, it says where you previously registered. And so in this case, I'm registered to vote in Virginia, where I have been since the late 1990s. And I thought I did what I was supposed to do, which is I check the box. I tell them where I was previously registered, and then they undo it, right? That makes sense. I might have actually first been registered in Connecticut, where I worked and went to school, and then went to Virginia. Anyway, but the point is that I assume that when you do this, the law says, okay, the current Secretary of State notifies the previous one and says, hey, Mr. Smith, in this case, Mr. Spicer, has moved. And somehow they made it upon me. Like it was somehow like I had done something wrong when all I had done was move and register somewhere else. And they tried to make this some kind of example. I actually think it exposed exactly the problem that you're talking about.
Sean, it might have been the only time the left-wing media cared about somebody registered in two states, because we have sent thousands of other examples to reporters, to election officials. This is commonplace. And by the way, Virginia is one of the only states that say, where were you used to be registered? Where did you previously live? Most states don't do it. We just issued a report showing people registered in New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, in double states by the thousands. So what you did is nothing unusual. It's because states aren't doing their job to find out where people used to live. They aren't doing their job.
But so in my case, let's just say it wasn't Virginia. Let's say I moved to Maryland. Who is responsible for telling the previous state, hey, this person is no longer registered in your state. They're now ours?
Nobody. Federal law doesn't address this. The closest you get is under the NVRA, motor voter. After a period of time goes by, if a state is doing their job, and most states aren't, if a state is doing their job, they will figure out that you moved away. But it takes like 3 federal cycles before you could even do anything at the fastest. At the quickest, it takes like 6 years.
Okay, so let's do the math right now. So it's 2025. This story came out in 2017, so 8 years ago in the White House, right? And I'm just trying to do this math. I in full disclosure, I didn't take math in college. So if I was, I was 45 when I was in the White House. Okay, so I hadn't voted in Rhode Island since at least when I was 20 years old, maybe. It could have been 18. So let's just say at best, it had been 25 years. Don't you think that's kind of insane that I could have been on the voter rolls for 25 years, never voted, never worked, never cast, didn't have a license from there, didn't pay taxes there, and yet I was still on the voter rolls 25, minimum, by the way. It probably could have been closer to 27 years.
Totally insane. I have made the offer before that we are happy. The Public Interest Legal Foundation is happy to represent you and anyone like you for free to threaten Rhode Island and say, hey, you need to get him off the rolls or we're going to sue you because you can't do this under the NVRA. We're looking for those kind of cases, more of them. But you're exactly right. It's insane. And Sean, here's the worst part. Blue states are the worst at this. People like Jocelyn Benson, people like Sheena Bellows.
Right, who are those people?
People like Jenna Griswold in Colorado. They don't care.
So those are the secretaries of state?
Correct.
Why don't they care?
Because they're militant progressive activists. Don't forget, Griswold tried to keep Trump off the ballot in Colorado. Jocelyn Benson.
Hold on. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you got to stop and just laugh at that. She wanted to keep Trump off the ballot, but she won't kick anyone off the ballot who's been not living there for. I mean, there's such irony. She doesn't want one person to be listed on the ballot, but she doesn't mind everyone else kind of being on the rolls.
Yeah, Jocelyn Benson in Michigan, the Secretary of State there, who, by the way, take note of her because she aspires for higher office. She is terrible at this stuff. She lets dead people on the rolls for, we know their names. We visited their graves in Michigan. There's a video. If you Google PILF, Michigan graves, you can see for yourself. We visited their graves, 25,000 dead people, some dead for decades on the active rolls. She just doesn't care.
I'm trying to think of which one I want to ask next. If you're dead and you can prove it, your organization can prove it, why would Jocelyn want someone to stay on the rolls if they're dead?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this takes you straight into progressive ideology.
Okay, take me
there.
there.
There's an orthodoxy on the left. Right. There's an orthodoxy on the left that it's better to not remove 30,000 dead people who are dead than to remove one living person by mistake, which, by the way, Oregon does. We had to sue Oregon. They actually are removing living people in Oregon as dead. They got it flipped over. But the progressives believe you can't take a risk. You don't dare remove anybody because you might remove somebody and disenfranchise them. And so that's where this is all coming from.
Okay. I wanted to save this question because this is the one that matters. a ton of people can be dead and still on the rolls. I was, as I said, on the rolls in Rhode Island for at least 25 years, but I never voted. And so the big $1 million question to you, Christian Adams, is have you guys found instances where dead people or people have voted in two states at once, i.e. meaning that they are actually benefiting from this in some way?
Of course we have, over and over and over and over again. Judith Presto in Pittsburgh. I visited her grave. She not only voted after she was dead, she registered after she was dead.
What?
Yeah, she registered. Her husband was arrested. We're finding this stuff all the time. Of course, the New York Times doesn't report on it. NPR doesn't report on it. But Google Judith Presto Public Interest Legal Foundation. You could see a picture of her tombstone that I actually took. She was dead in 13 and her husband registered her in 20.
Oh my God. So here's the funny thing, Christian. You mentioned you name checked NPR and the New York Times. If you listen to them, there's no fraud, right? They'll say there's no fraud. That's a right-wing talking point, a conspiracy theory. But you're telling me that you have literally posed next to the grave of a dead person that voted.
Yeah, Judith Presto in Pennsylvania. She's in a military cemetery outside of Pittsburgh. Like I said, go get the picture. PILF, Judith Presto, her husband was the one who did it. She died in 13. She registered in 20. She voted by mail in 2020.
That's amazing.
This is not a mystery. Over and over and over again, Sean, we find examples like this.
It's proof that there's life after death. I now, maybe at least it can help religious folks prove that there's life after death because you can still vote. But when you expose this, Christian, and you say, okay, Judith Presto voted, she's dead, here's her death certificate, here's her grave, what does someone say to that? Like, this is where I don't get the argument, because this is where I was hoping you weren't going to go, but I thought this is what had to be the case. When that happens, what do government officials say?
Well, at least in the case of Presto, her husband was arrested after we discovered it, or charged at least. So in that instance, kudos to the Pennsylvania authorities. But Sean, I testified to Congress earlier this year with Judith Presto's grave in my written materials, right, in front of House admin. And what do I get for that? I got attacked by a lunatic representative from California. I mean, they just don't want to hear it. It goes into a black hole. It violates their orthodoxy, their dogma. You cannot say there's any voter fraud around the progressive left because they shut down, they ignore you, they insult you. But that's part of a well-developed tactic going back to the Bush years, where they annihilate people personally and smear them, very Linsky style, whenever you bring this stuff up. They have to shut you down. So it's part of a larger tactic on the left to hide voter fraud.
It's insane. When this member of Congress attacked you, just humor me. What was the line of attack? How dare you? How dare you insult a dead person's ability to vote? You're disenfranchising them?
It's a broader smear, Sean. It's what they do is they look for any mistake anybody has ever made, and they use that mistake to smear generally. And years ago, we found what we thought were non-citizens voting in Virginia, because that's what Virginia said. These are non-citizens. And they took them off the voter rolls. So we just said, hey, these are non-citizens that were taken off the voter rolls. The left picks up on anything to denounce, to taint, to smear, because that's that's their whole method going back, to 1917. They're very in favor of smearing people, like you were. And so they delegitimize anybody like Hans von Spakovsky at the Heritage Foundation. Anybody who writes about voter fraud is delegitimized by the progressive left, by Media Matters, by The Nation, by Ari Berman, another mouthpiece on this issue. They denounce and delegitimize anybody who does good research.
Unbelievable. I want to talk to you about what your role has been. I know you guys have been leading the effort on exposing what it comes to mail fraud. And with all due respect, I would say this to you, Christian. Before you did it, Jimmy Carter did it. He wrote a report about the dangers of mail fraud. President Trump on August 18th put out this truth. He said, I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. And also, while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive and serious controversial voting machines. All right, I have two questions for you. The first one is this. What authority because a lot of the immediate reaction of the media was the federal government has no role in state elections, local elections. Therefore, the president is toothless when it comes to this. So number one, does he have any power to act on this? And then secondly, considering that you guys literally have been the leaders in this effort, sounding the horn to the dangers of mail-in ballots, what are those dangers and where are we in terms of exposing it and getting rid of it? So if we can address the first one first, does he have the authority to address this? And then secondly, what do we need to worry about with mail-in balloting?
There's a couple easy things that can be done. First of all, a whole bunch of federal dollars through the Help America Vote Act and the Election Assistance Commission. I know that's a bunch of Washington letters, but a bunch of federal dollars, millions of dollars, went to states to pay to encourage mail voting in 2020. We can do the opposite. We can say, if you want these HAVA dollars, if you want these federal dollars, stop with the crazy mail voting. Stop accepting ballots for days or weeks after the election is over. That's the first thing, is cut off the money.
Why are we doing that anyway? I mean, I guess my question is, why are we spending federal it seems to me that was pretty agenda driven.
Yeah, go back to 2020. Hundreds of millions of dollars went to states to buy things to let them do mail voting better or at all. Printers, scanners. They hired people in Philadelphia to work for the city to go door to door to encourage people to vote by mail. That's how bad it got in 2020. So what you do is the flip side. You say, if you want these federal dollars ever again, you get rid of mail voting. So that's the first thing. Second thing, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled you can't accept ballots after Election Day in the mail. We sued North Dakota to stop it because they did 3 weeks. We lost on standing, not the merits. Our plaintiff didn't have standing. What the president can do is instruct his Justice Department to go after the states that are accepting mail ballots late. Now, this case is going to get to the Supreme Court in months, if maybe out of Mississippi. But for now, announce that if you're accepting mail ballots late, you're violating federal law. That's another thing that can be done right away. Now, you had a second question for me.
Well, the second question, so obviously there's the legal authority of President Trump, which you just answered. But then the bigger and broader question is, what do we need to know? Because so here's the deal. Just to call it out, I think there's a difference between mail-in voting and absentee voting, okay?
Of course.
In Virginia, we had absentee ballot, and you had one of 13 excuses. I'm going to be working during the hours of the voting, and I'll be traveling. I'm sick and I'm infirmed and I can't make it to the polls. So I believe in absentee ballots. I've been in the military 26 years. I believe strongly in the ability of service members to obviously be able to vote, because most of them can't just come from a ship or overseas forward base and vote, right? That's a no-brainer to me. But when you encourage people to just cast their ballots willy-nilly, in Virginia, Christian, we start voting in September for a November election, well before debates happen, advertising happens. I mean, I find that insane. But these mail-in ballots, walk us through. Jimmy Carter, as I said, held a commission. The president has been highlighting this. What are the dangers of mail-in ballots?
So if I was going to design the worst possible system to hold an election, I would have automatic mail voting. In other words, everyone in the voter rolls gets a ballot, and I would have dirty voter rolls. And then I would call it, Sean, the state of Nevada, because that's exactly what they do in Nevada, is they have automatic mail. And if you Google Public Interest Legal Foundation Nevada video, you will see us visiting liquor stores, Larry Flint's Hustler Club, pot shops, casinos, where there's people registered to vote that don't live there. We couldn't even find them. We went looking, and they're getting mail ballots automatically mailed.
Hold on. There is a person that is registered to vote in Nevada that's address is the Hustler Club.
Oh, yeah. No, we visited the Hustler Club looking for him.
Dude, you are the first person that I've ever heard that actually has a legitimate excuse work-wise to say, we went to a strip club because we were working.
Yeah, and we went to a casinos. I mean, it's a hoot. I mean, watch the video. The PILF, Nevada, you'll see it.
I was looking for Ronald or William Phelps.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, so they don't live here.
At the bar?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, this is the address we had for them, so I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, God, yeah, no.
Okay.
I don't even recognize them.
And we did the same thing in Arizona, where we went to all these crazy places like liquor stores and 7-Elevens where there were no voters, even though they're registered there. But in Nevada, Sean, they mail them. Stacks of ballots show up at the casinos for people registered to vote there who don't live there. Liquor stores. We went to liquor stores in Las Vegas where people are registered to vote. They don't live there. So it's the worst system you can have.
Is Nevada is a register by party, I believe, state, correct?
I think it is. And I think Adam Laxalt would be in the Senate right now if, in fact, they didn't have this system. I'm convinced of it.
I wonder, all those people who are registered to vote at the Hustler Club, casinos, and liquor stores, I would be very interested to see which party they're registered to, unless you have some insight on that.
Yeah, I'd have to look. We can get back to you and tell everybody. I have a funny feeling I know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I do too, because I think that's the bigger point here, is that it benefits one party. There's no reason. I mean, to your point, like, I don't find it, the excuses are flimsy. It's like, oh, they're being disenfranchised. Like, I'm sorry, they're dead, or they're registered to live at a business, whether it's a strip club, a liquor store, or a construction place, or a Home Depot. That obviously, that's not a residence. And I think that should send red flags off. But I actually think it would be fascinating to really start to show how many of these people are registered by party, or have voted in a Democratic caucus or primary.
Yeah, well, look, the problem in Nevada is acute, and everything goes downhill from there. California's terrible. Oregon's terrible. Wisconsin is bad. They're not following their own state law there. We had to sue them at Green Bay. The election officials there actually admitted in our lawsuit they didn't even know what the law was. So this level of lawlessness, it combines with these broken systems to really create a problem in the integrity of our elections.
So let's just be clear about this. Oregon, California, Wisconsin. You know what's kind of a common theme, the through line in each of those? They all have Democratic governors, don't they?
Yeah.
So is this more than that? Is that literally, what are the other really egregious states that refuse to do anything about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, Pennsylvania is bad, Michigan's bad. And here's what it is, Sean. It's not only are they Democratic governors, but because they drink the progressive Kool-Aid, the election officials, the governors, we have a case in Pennsylvania where Trump voters got death threats in the mail. Literally, I'm going to kill you because you have a Trump sign in the mail. This isn't like they heard about it. I mean, they got a letter and they opened it. But you have a governor in Josh Shapiro who talks about political violence and then doesn't do anything about it when it shows up. And so you have these progressives in charge of these states that have drank the Kool-Aid that nothing is wrong, nothing needs to be fixed, and they don't care about people who aren't like them. That's what it boils down to, is Josh Shapiro doesn't care about Trump voters because he's not a Trump voter. Jocelyn Benson doesn't care about conservatives because she's not a conservative. And that's what drives their actions and their exercise of their petty power.
We've talked about dead people and people who clearly aren't living at the place. How bad is it? You mentioned people who are not in this country legally. How bad is that problem? Because let me just lay out my premise for you. If you go and give everyone a driver's license, and then in many of these states, you're not allowed to ask their citizenship, and in fact, they're encouraged to get one, and then you need that same piece of information to register to vote. The excuse that I hear from Democrats, Christian, is, oh, that's illegal. So let me get this straight. You came into the country illegally. You're staying here illegally, but the threshold of your crime will stop when it comes to voting, which, by the way, if you vote for one party, they'll probably help you stay in the country illegally. So it's in your benefit to break the law once again. I find that to be a pretty flimsy argument, but how big of a deal is it?
Well, look, we've researched this. We've gotten the records of people who registered to vote as non-citizens. Some of the excuses are crazy. Like in a one Pennsylvania document, they said, I thought I was registering for the school student council election. I mean, these crazy excuses. Now, Sean, often it's third-party groups like LULAC and MALDEF who are going and doing third-party registration drives. That was the number one reason in North Carolina why foreigners were getting on the rolls, was third-party registration drives. So, look, it is a problem. It is not fixed by merely saying, like you said, oh, I promise I'm not breaking the law. But that's what the Democrats in Congress will say. Like, I can hear it in my head. Well, they have to affirm under penalty of perjury that they're a U.S. citizen. Yeah. It's not working.
By the way, I want to go back to mail-in voting for 1 second, because one of the things that the president said that I thought was fascinating, I didn't know this, and I don't know if you know it, but he said we're like the only country in the civilized world that allows mail-in voting.
Yeah, PolitiFact, by the way, jumped on that. And PolitiFact, by the way, if you know what they are, they're a progressive left-wing propaganda outfit that claims to be a fact checker. What they do, they did a big story on this and like, is this true or not? What's the truth-o-meter? It is pretty much totally true. There's only a couple places that allow mail-in voting. Most places think it's nuts, because it is. You don't want to trust the post office, the people who bring you your neighbor's mail, with running an election. It is a disaster, and it's a sad state of affairs. This is an example of how the left wing sets up C3s, like PolitiFact, Media Matters, all these propaganda outfits to attack and smear. After I testified to Congress, PolitiFact doubted something I said, and we gave them the proof. We sent them the documents, and they never heard from them again. You don't get a truth meter, positive rate from PolitiFact if you're a conservative. They exist to attack President Trump on this issue, but he's 99% right, but not a PolitiFact.
I know. I love how they'll say almost every country in the world does, but Zimbabwe, which is technically does allow it in certain cases. Like they don't actually, it's not a fact check, right? It's a narrative check, because it's not actually about the truth. I always tell people, I wrote this in my first book. Mike Pence gave a speech and he said something like, more Americans than ever are employed. That's a factual truth. Like, there's no debating that. PolitiFact fact checked him and said, what Pence said was out of context because the country has grown. And so he should have stated it in the context of overall population, which it's fairly consistent. And I was like, wait a second. What he said was true, but it's like saying, like, it's like walking up to an individual and giving them a compliment. Wow, you look nice tonight. And PolitiFact would come in and say, well, Spicer gave them a compliment that they looked nice tonight. He failed to mention that their shoes were untied when he did it.
Yeah, I'm going to call out one of them who does elections. Her name is Amy Sherman.
Okay.
Amy Sherman is an abject propagandist for the left.
Where does she work?
And she deserves no credibility whatsoever.
Where is she?
She's at PolitiFact.
Really?
She does elections for PolitiFact, and she's an absolute hack propagandist that should not be taken seriously.
All right, we've talked about the bad guys, like the Nevada, the Michigan, the Wisconsin, California. What states are doing this well?
Oh, this is so good to answer. I'll give you a couple examples. Florida. Florida is just terrific. They've done everything right. We have a report called From Worst to First. They used to be the worst. Now they're in the first place.
What makes them better?
Frankly,
what got them there? Like, walk me through what they did to earn an A.
They get results in on election night because they speed mail ballots. They do all the things right with mail. They allow you to use a wide variety of information to keep the voter rolls clean. They have statutory gateways for information that allow you to clean the voter rolls. They have committed elected officials like Cord Byrd, Don Palmer, who was there. Unlike Jocelyn Benson, all the progressives, these guys want to get the job done. Mississippi does a great job. Tennessee does a great job. Virginia sometimes, but there's other states that are doing a good job. West Virginia, Mac Warner cleaned up West Virginia. You remember 20 years ago, Sean, West Virginia was a punchline with elections. Yeah. You know, the coal country was like some of the most corrupt stuff you could have. Mac Warner cleaned that up in West Virginia, and now his brother's doing the same. So there are some bright pockets. There's names I haven't mentioned that are also there that deserve some credit, but Florida really leads the pack. So
as I said, I live in Virginia. I've been voting here for almost 30 years. How do we do here in Virginia?
Pretty good, but, you know, things got so partisan under the previous administrations that it became very difficult to untangle. They embedded progressive C3 employees inside election offices to do work for free, essentially. Virginia kind of went off the rails. They enacted crazy stuff when the legislature and the governor were all blue that we still haven't untangled. And so there's some real problems in Virginia. You can't even use jury escape forms, meaning I don't want to do on jury duty because I'm from Guatemala. I'm a non-citizen. Virginia doesn't even allow you to use that kind of data to keep the rolls clean, whereas most states do.
So wait, if you affirm to the state that I can't serve on a jury because I'm not a citizen, they can't use that same information to make sure that you're not actually voting.
Yeah, Kane vetoed it twice. In fact, it's not to the state. You're affirming it to a judge
Senator
who can put
Tim
you in
Kaine,
jail.
right?
Yeah.
This is a United States senator who was governor.
Yeah. No, all kinds. So Virginia is not so great. I mean, the current Commonwealth, the election head is doing the best she can, I guess, with what she has. But trust me, Virginia is a really far down the road bad on a lot of issues.
The last thing I want to touch on with you is this battle on redistricting. I talked to Governor Perry of Texas about this. You guys have been very involved in this. What have you guys done to make sure that we expose the left's hypocrisy on this issue?
Well, litigating and winning, I guess, would be the short answer. But what happened was we got involved in a case out of Galveston a couple years ago where I said, let's kill this thing called coalition districts. This is the case to do it. We showed up. We went to trial. We took it to the Fifth Circuit, and we got an en banc, meaning the entire Fifth Circuit reversed itself. 20 years of jurisprudence that allowed Black and Hispanics to combine to form Democrat districts. That's what started this whole snowball going with what's happening now in Austin, is taking race out of the equation is what we tried to do.
So I had Harmeet Dillon on the show. She's the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. She was referring to a case. This is your case?
Yeah, this was my idea, actually. I don't like to focus on that, but Joe Nixon here at PILF and I, when we saw the Galveston case cooking, we flew down there and told the Galveston they can win this case with a silver bullet. And again, it's called Jingles One. It's this ancient idea from 30 years ago that you can combine races. We said this is the case to kill it. So we pled it. We won in the Fifth Circuit, and that's what opened up the floodgates for Texas to do this redistricting. Is that case that we won called Petaway v. Galveston. But
I think the broader point in this, Christian, is that, and this is what Harmeet said, they have been forced to redistrict. Yes, it is obviously, but like you guys won this case, which made them do it. So the Democrats saying Republicans are just doing this in the middle of, a normal 10-year cycle, it's not accurate, right? Because the court was saying you guys need to comply with this new Galveston ruling.
Not so much. What the court actually did was give them a reason to do a mid-cycle because the law changed.
Okay.
But they didn't have to do it. The court didn't force them to do a statewide redistricting, but it gave them the green light to do it. There's a difference between giving someone the green light and shoving them through the intersection. And what the court did was give them a green light to do redistricting because of this court win.
Okay. But I think the bigger and broader point that I've tried to make is that, like, you look like at California, 38% of the vote went Republican last time, and only 9 of its 52 seats are Republican. That's 20%. In Illinois, 44% of the vote went Republican. Only 3 of the 17 seats, which is 17%, went Republican. In New York, it was a 43% Republican vote last time, and 7 of 26, which is 26.9% of the vote, got allocated to Republicans. In Maryland, it's 34% Republican and only 12%, 1 of the 8 seats, actually went Republican. And in Oregon, Oregon went 41% Republican, only 1 of the 6 seats are allocated to Republicans, which is 16%. And then lastly, New Jersey, 46% of New Jerseyans voted Republican last time and only 25%, 3 of the 12 seats. Democrats have no problem doing this when it benefits them.
Well, don't forget in Dallas County, Texas, they decided to wipe out all Republicans on the county council. Same with Harris. They said, hey, that's Houston. They said, hey, let's get rid of every single Republican. Let's wipe them out. And they did redistricting specifically to wipe out every last Republican from county council.
Unbelievable. Christian, I got to thank you and everyone there at the Public Interest Legal Foundation for what you're doing to fight this fight, because election integrity may not be the sexiest thing in the world, but it's critical to maintaining. When they talk about democracy being under attack, this is really democracy under attack. And what you guys are doing to fight the good fight, I can't thank you enough for doing that. Thank you for joining us today and sharing all this information with us.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
You bet.